I don't know, this may be controversial for some of your listeners, but that God does not have a plan for my life. God has a plan. How will I use my life to be a part of that plan?
Yeah,
I have a life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How will I use my life to be a part of that so that I get to be part of that work of creation? And as what I'm devoting my life to, does it pass the sniff test? Is it consistent with the systems of life? If it's not consistent with the systems of life, then it is of the systems of death.
Yes.
And how will I use my life? I mean, I have a choice about how I want to do that.
Yeah, that's not a controversial thing to say at all. It's a necessary thing to say. I spent a lot of time, because pastorally, the idea of God having a life plan for your life is an absolute disaster, because if people have been through the death of a child or something like that and are reading it as, oh, this is part of God's plan for my life, God becomes the most amazing despot. And also, we have no agency. It's a ridiculous idea that God's got a plan for our life, other than God has a desire for our life that we will discover what it is to live the life of love and transformation. But that's not a plan, and it certainly doesn't include us winning stuff or losing stuff.
And we really need help, don't we, to discern. We've got so many narratives that are kind of locked in, have become locked in with Christian faith and practice and the way we tell our stories. And how do we discern where that spirit of death is and be able to interrogate it? Because I think we've lost, and discernment has been, it's such a central part of how we practice the faith. Practicing this discernment and that's the very task, is to see where are the systems of death, where is this leading me to life, because it's not about a plan, but it's about the lure of God, and God always lures us into life. But we need to be discerning and not just accepting the locked in narrative that that we have grown up hearing, to question it. And so, I'm wondering at what point, where do we lose that discernment and become just so accepting? And I know it's hooked into money and power, but there's a few prophets that have always been railing against it. But gosh, it seems to me in the Western church we should have had a few more prophets in the last centuries.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, my editor didn't go for this, but I wanted to have a chapter that was called "The Lust for Security," because I think among the average Christian parishioner or congregation, it's not really about wanting money and power per se, but having or even comfort, but more having security. That I want to know what's going to happen. And if I'm wise and thrifty, I'm going to be able to have a comfortable retirement. I'm going to be able to send my kids to college. And in order to do that, I want to know what's going to happen in my life. And in order to do that, I'm going to invest in systems of death, because that's what good people do. That's what good middle-class people do. They have 401ks and they invest in blue chip stock. Consequences be damned, because usually that stock is stock in extractive industry, just exactly the way, the stock market was at one time based upon slavery. And so that desire for security, I would say, is the biggest challenge to faithfulness that there is. And one of the things I say to people, I know it's kind of irritating, so thank you for bearing with me. There is no security in this world. You are going to die. There is nothing that is going to stop that. You are going to die. You're mortal. And as long as you know that, you're going to die, then you can do anything at all with your life. That is your choice. There is not a prescription that says that you have to follow these pathways so that you're not going to be a burden to your children and so that you're going to be able to hold up your head. You can choose to do what's right. You can make that choice, because, I'm not sure that Jesus and his mandate makes any promise of comfort or security at all.
Except for when he's joking. There's that wonderful, which I think is Jesus having an absolute razz of the apostles when they say, look, we left everything to follow you. What are we going to get? And he goes, and I imagine this, this bunch of guys who haven't had a shower in 3 months. So what are we going to get out of this? And Jesus says, oh, no worries. You're going to have thrones. You're going to have castles. You're going to have all this stuff. And we read it as in seed. If you're loyal, Jesus will reward you. I think Jesus was taking the mickey out of them and saying, well, guys, if you want all of that stuff, you can have it. But, I think, half of them would have been rolling around in laughter as Jesus sort of mocked Peter, who's asked this really dumb question about ultimate security, really. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to have it all. I'm going to rule. I'm going to have power, security, and safety. And Jesus is saying, basically using the backdrop of what they're going through, saying, your desires are wrong. But we preach it as, these are sacred words of Jesus, who promises those who follow and those who believe riches and wealth and, as you say, security. And yet the martyrs tell us a very different story. They're the people who risk everything, including their lives, for a vision of the commonwealth of God.